हेलो फ्रेंड्स, वेलकम बैक। बिफोर स्टार्टिंग कुछ महत्वपूर्ण सूचना। इफ़ यू हैव नॉट सब्सक्राइब्ड माय चैनल देन डू सब्सक्राइब इट, क्योंकि अब से हर हफ्ते मैं एक वीडियो डालने वाला हूं जो कि मेरे हिसाब से आपके बहुत काम आ सकती है। डू check the description box for more follow links. So let's start now. My setup is ready, and today we are going to discuss about React hooks. You can think it as small crash course of 10 minutes which will brush up your context and understanding. So the hooks that we are going to discuss today is useState, useEffect, useRef, and useImperativeHandle. Before jumping to the code, let us have few words on React hooks. Hooks are JavaScript function which allow us to use state and other React class component behavior inside functional components. So, hooks by definition can only be used inside functional component. It follow another rule, which is always call it at the top level, which means no if, no for, no nesting should contain React hooks. So let us start with some codes. We will be starting with adding a state variable and render its value. You can check the response on the right hand side of the screen in the mobile device, and the logs can be seen in the middle screen. So for creating a state in React functional component, we will have to import a function named useState. So this function takes initial value when you are initializing it and will be giving it as 0. As a response, useState gives us two variables in an array. So this will look like this structure, and will name first value as count and second value as set count. So the first value here is the variable that you can use to render or pass it to something, and the second value is used to change the state. So we have created a state value, and now we are going to use it for rendering. So here it is. I have made the changes, and let's see if it reflects in the mobile device. So we can see 0 is reflected on the mobile device. Now we want to make the change in the state variable. So for this, let us add a button which will help us trigger the state change. So we'll import button from the library of the React Native, and we are going to set a title on this. For now, the name is given as change, and we are going to save it. We can see the screen reflects this button, and now we'll have to add a trigger function. So we are going to create a function named onPress, and we are going to pass it to button. So the parameters that we need is onPress, and we are going to pass it here. So we can check if this is getting triggered or not. So we'll put one log here. So let's see if this log is visible, and let's save it. So our screen is rendered. Let's click the button, and we can see we are getting the log. Now we want to change the state. Then how do we change it? So as I said earlier, the first variable in this array is the value that I can use, and the second value is for changing the state. So we are going to use both of it here. Let's see how we are going to use it. Count plus 1, bingo. Now let's save it. Oh, what is this error? Hmm, let's reload it. Okay, something happened, but yep, reloading made the change. So let's click it, log, and we are seeing that number changed to 1. Then we'll click it again and let's see the number is changing. So here our set count function is working as expected, and we are able to see the value of count changing. So the next thing that we are going to discuss is useEffect. UseEffect is termed as side effect function in a functional component. In functional component, this adds life cycle similar to React class component. There are several forms of this function which we are going to discuss today. So before that, let us add one useEffect function in the code. So for using it, let us first import it. useEffect takes two parameters as an input. The first one is mandatory and the second one is optional. So for now we are going to add only the first parameter, and let's see how it works. So I'm adding a console log here to check if it is running or not. So let us see the screen, and we see the log is having one value in the terminal, useEffect. So to test it, let us click the button and check if we are getting the log again or not. We can see that useEffect log is printed again, and as many times we are clicking this button, we are getting this useEffect. So this is the first form of the useEffect. If we are using it without any dependency parameter, we are going to execute everything that is present in useEffect every time the component renders. The second form of this useEffect is as soon as we add one dependency parameter in the second value as empty array. So let us see the behavior again. I'm going to save it and let's see. Okay, I came out and we are seeing this useEffect log once, and now let us click the change button again. We can see we are clicking this change button, but we are seeing useEffect log only once, and this is the second form of the useEffect. So if you're giving empty dependency array, you're going to execute useEffect only once in the app cycle. Now we are going to see the third form of useEffect, but before that, let us create something else. For this, we are going to create another state variable, and you're correct, we can use as many React hooks inside a single component. So the second state value that I'm going to create is trigger, and set trigger and useState. And we'll give it a initial value as false. So I'm going to save it and we'll see no change here, but I'm going to use the state value something different. So let's add it in a dependency array. Now again, even if we are clicking this change button, we are not seeing useEffect. So we are going to tweak this change button on press function. So let us add a set trigger on this, and I'm going to swap this trigger value at every click. Before checking it, let us add this value, and I'm going to add it alright. We are seeing this value in the screen, and now we are going to press the change button again, and we'll see the result in the middle screen. So let's go, and we can see that we are getting the useEffect log again on clicking the change button, and the corresponding value on the trigger is also changing on the screen, and the number is also changing. So let's trigger it again, and we'll see this log again. Oh yes. So if you're giving any state variable inside a dependency array of useEffect, then when that state value changes, useEffect is also triggered. And this is the third form of useEffect. So when you're comparing useEffect with the lifecycle class component, you can compare it with component mount, component update. So the fourth form that we're going to discuss today for useEffect is how do we call component will unmount using useEffect. So for doing that, from the first parameter, we have to return a function, and you have to do all sort of tasks inside this function. So this is how we are going to do this. So whatever task you have, you can create it here, or rather, like, mostly you will do the cleanup task, so you can push those cleanup tasks in this return function. So this is it regarding the useEffect function. Now the next thing that we're going to discuss today is useRef. How do we create it? How do we use it? So let's start and add a useRef function in the code. useRef takes a parameter which is the initial value, and we are going to take it as something 100, and it act as a normal variable, and we can create is something like a reference value. And when we want to use this useRef, we just do this. So let's see in the effect, we're pressing it, and we are seeing this 100 getting printed in the console. So the question comes, how do we update this? So for updating this, let's add 1 to this value, and for doing this, we just do this. After initializing, this acts as a normal variable in the JavaScript. How thing is, how it is different from a normal constant variable. So let me create another variable which is something like v equals to 0, and we are going to print this inside on press. So let's print it. So what we are getting it is 0 on every button click. So we are getting 0 in the print section, and now we are going to update this variable. As this, So the expectation is when we are going to print it, we are going to see the incremental change in the value v. So let us trigger this button, and no, we are not seeing this change in the v. The reason being, when this function is re-rendered, the value of v is again initialized and reset to 0, and this is the reverse case of reference value. So when you're creating a reference variable, you are initializing it only once in the component life cycle. Before moving to last topic of the video, let us talk something. Suppose A and B are two components where B is the child of A. So sometimes A with full codeful relationship may want to order B to do some task. But before ordering something to B, A must know what B is capable of. So our next topic is based on this analogy. In this case, I have already created one child component and we are going to use that. So before moving to the child component, let us clean up the code. We are going to clean up this console here and remove this updation of this variable, and we are going to remove this reference variable for now, and this cleanup is done. Now we are going to child component, and I have a child component already ready. Now the first task is how do we pass control to parent component. So for doing that, we are going to use something called ForwardRef, and we are going to get this ForwardRef from a React. So this is how we are going to use ForwardRef on a component. So ForwardRef is used on a child component for whose reference we want to pass to the parent. So we are going to add one more parameter in the function which we are going to use later on in this child component. And now we want to pass this control to parent component. So for that, we are going to create a reference variable and we will name it as child ref, and we are not going to give any value here. So by default, this is going to be a null value. We're going to reload it, and I don't know why this is coming very frequently, but yes, we can ignore this for now. Let us import our child component, and I imported it, and we are going to use this to render. So the default render we are going to see on the right hand side as type something. So now we want to bind it with parent. We will have to take the reference of the child. So for doing that, we will use the parameter ref, and we will add the reference variable that we have created here. So we're going to copy it and we are going to pass it here. So by doing this, we have taken the control of child to the parent. Now the second question is, how do we make a parent know that this child is capable of doing this? So here comes our next React hook in the picture. So the hook is useImperativeHandle. So let's see how we are going to use it. So useImperativeHandle takes two parameters as input. First is the reference value, which we will be getting from line number 4. So we are going to pass it, and the second value is a function. So the role of this function is to return the functionality that is being used by this child and can be called by a parent. So let us return something. So whatever is present in this object can be used by the parent of this child component. So for now we are going to name it as uh, exposed function, and it will be a function here so that we can test it. So I'm going to put the log here as I am calling from child. So we are done here, and let's move to parent component and see if we are able to call this function or not. So let's move. We have this child reference, we have the function of onPress in place, so we are going to use it, and we are going to invoke that function that we have from the child component. So we have the variable as childRef, and we can access it using current, and the function name is exposed function, and we are going to call it. Let us cross verify the function name, and let's copy it and paste it here. Now every time we make a button press here, we should get a log in the browser console. So let us press the button, and we can see that a child log is coming in the browser console. So we are successfully exposing functions outside of the child component so that parent can use that function to invoke certain functionality in the child. So let us update the state here. So we can indirectly pass it okay, let us ignore this for now. Yes, so the main objective is done. We are able to invoke this function from app.js to child.js. So I hope you like the video, and if yes, please do give a thumbs up and leave a comment below. I'll meet you in the next video. Till then, enjoy and be safe.